What's up, ladies and gentlemen? In today's video, we're looking at Overwatch 2. Sadly, I was covering this last night during the show and my internet dropped. So I promised that I would make the videos so that you guys can at least know the news. We're talking, of course, about Overwatch 2 and its drama. Now, the drama spilled out from a tweet that came from the lead developer of Overwatch, and then eventually from a blue post, and then from more tweets by some of the developers in Overwatch. So I'm going to cover everything in as short an amount of time as humanly possible. Let's see if we can do it in under 10 minutes. Quick thanks to all of the patrons, the YouTube members, and of course the Twitch subs. Without your help, this channel would not exist, so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. With that said, let's get into it. So the Overwatch 2 drama started with the announcement that Hero Mode will be removed from the game, or from the roadmap. Blizzard is no longer working on it. It was a tweet, and it was basically just dropped in the players' laps, and as you can imagine, the players acted like players always do. Outrage, fear, screaming, a lot of anger, and to some extent, it's understandable. Overwatch 2 at its core was sold to the player base as this new architecture required so that they can build Hero Mode. That was the whole idea. The architecture of Overwatch 1 wouldn't really sustain Hero Mode, and therefore number 2 had to come out because it's a new artwork, new architecture, and it can now sustain Hero Mode. So a lot of players bought into this idea right off the bat, and people were very excited for it. Rightfully so, people were angry, but then the blue post came out, and I'm not going to read the blue post to you. I'll just give you a quick overview of what exactly happened. Most of you will remember Project Titan. Project Titan was an MMO that Blizzard started working on years ago, and for many years there were whispers and rumors about this new FPS MMO, but we never got any information. Then Blizzard announces Overwatch 1, and soon details start to come out where Project Titan failed. They could never find the fun, and the game was actually very far along in its development cycle, and it was only once they started playing the game internally that they realized there's no fun here. The game has no soul. The game just does not deliver on what they were hoping, and so they scrapped it, and they made Overwatch 1. At least that's the official story. What we didn't know, and what this blue post unveiled, was that it was never scrapped. The idea was to go from the start with something new and to force themselves into a narrower scope, because that was the main thing. Mike Morhaime said this at the time. The reason Project Titan failed was because of scope. The scope just getting larger and larger and larger to the point where it completely lost any semblance of what it was meant to be. Now, scope is just another word for player promises. These are the promises that developers make to players when they buy the game. These are the things that you can and will experience in our video game. And the scope just got out of control. So the new idea, as this blue post explains, was to start with the fundamentals. The fundamentals is gameplay. The fundamentals is shooting, first person to be specific. The fundamentals of PvP, and then to build from there. They soon ran into problems in Overwatch 1 with its architecture, realizing that this will not sustain the long-term goal of what they wanted to achieve, and the roadmap for them internally was Overwatch 1, then PvE missions, and then Hero Mode. So Overwatch 2 comes along, and it now sets up the next stage of this evolution, where the PvE missions come out, and then finally the Hero Mode. But they soon started running into the same problems with Hero Mode. The scope kept getting larger and larger, and as the scope improved, or as the scope increased, they started pulling more and more developers off of the live game into Project Titan in order to make that work. And time again, they ran into roadblocks where this thing would just not work. The scope would just constantly get too large. And the idea, the final journey for this was to create Project Titan, was to get back to Overwatch, the MMO. And this is what was scrapped. When they say Hero Mode was scrapped, it means that Overwatch, the MMO, is finally dead. Now, I do want to quickly point out, I think Blizzard's whole unveil of this information, by the way, I love the communication from Blizzard nowadays, the fact that they are on point and speaking to their player base. But in this instance, I do think you guys were a little quick on the trigger. You probably should have announced this in the blue post. The blue post came out a few days after the announcement, where you already gave players the ability to sort of formulate in their own minds reasons for why this happened, and none of those reasons are ever good. And then you come out with the blue post, and the blue post does actually explain exactly what happened, but at the end of the day, it's already too late. The vast majority of players will not see that blue post. They'll just be angry for anger's sake. And this could have all been avoided if you guys just, from the beginning, announced it with the blue post, so people could immediately see why hero mode was removed from the game. After the blue post had come out, there's now been a new development in the story. In the blue post, Blizzard takes full responsibility for the failure of Overwatch 1 in effect, as well as for the lackluster receival of Overwatch 2. Even though Overwatch 2 is largely successful, I think Blizzard was hoping for more of a success story for Overwatch 2, and they do this by simply admitting that they remove talent from the PvP game in order to try and make this hero mode work, and it would just not work. And they recommitted themselves to taking all of those developers back to the PvP game, to the live game, to put in the actual effort that the live game requires in order to be a successful game. They admit their mistake and they tell us how it's going to be done better. But then comes the tweets from developers at Blizzard Entertainment. And these tweets effectively gaslight the community into going, how dare you be angry at us? How dare you say that we cheated you? One of these developers, Dylan Snyder, said people really think developers will spend years of their lives maliciously misleading players, like we get our kicks by disappointing them out of spite or something. It's exhausting. And you have Chris that said, living in a world where being a publisher developer equates to being a virtual punching bag. You either release a shit product and get torched, or you cut back to not make a shit game only to get torched. So these are two of the tweets. There are actually many more that is seeking to, I guess gaslight is, it's not necessarily the right word, but it's, generally speaking, it's the closest term to what is happening here. Effectively saying, look, not our fault, you can't blame us. And to this, I would say they really don't get it. It's clear that these developers really don't understand where the anger is actually coming from. It's not that you guys rug pulled, right? Because you did rug pull. You sold Overwatch 2 on this promise of hero mode. That's a promise that you guys made. Now you're going back on that promise. And also, the way you went back on that promise, as I already said, you should have done the blue post with the going back on the promise, because it would have given people a lot more insight. The problem here is the over-promising from the AAA industry. The fact that you guys continuously over-promise things and they not deliver on those things, even when it is quite obvious that the things that you're over-promising on is very hard, and there's a good chance that those things are not going to come out. You could avoid all of this by simply promising what you know you can deliver and leaving everything else as a secret until you know it's ready to be released. The idea here is that you overpromise in order to get people sold on things like early purchases, early access, early season passes, things of that nature, only to then rug pull because you've run into genuine issues. And here it's even a little bit more unforgivable, because Project Titan failed as a result of you trying to do this very hero mode thing. And you didn't seem to think that, hey, maybe we shouldn't promise this again, because we know that this is prone to failure. It might actually be a good idea. For those of you that don't know, Project Titan was a rumor within the gaming industry. Like, all gamers were talking about Project Titan and when it's coming out. Blizzard never admitted anything. It wasn't until after Project Titan had failed that Blizzard came out and said, yeah, all right, we were working on a game called Project Titan, and it did fail. Right? Blizzard kept their mouth shut because at the end of the day, they didn't want to get people's hopes up in case it went awry and it just didn't work out. So in my opinion, these developers don't understand. If you guys stopped overpromising, if you simply promised what you know you can deliver, people would not be as outraged as they are. It's really simple, basic maths. It's not difficult. And then you have this sort of weird thing that's going around now on the internet. Balial actually tweeted this out, where developers are actually sharing this as a new way of critiquing video games and how you should be doing it. The way you supposedly should be critiquing video games, it comes from an Amazon bestseller, which effectively says the following, right? So it says how to critique a game dev. Feast upon the compliment sandwich. So you start with a compliment, then you politely bring up your critique, and then you end with another compliment. And the real world example here is, hey, I love your game. It's amazing. Something like a full screen option would be rad, right? And then I bought your game and wrote a positive review and told all my friends. That's how you're supposed to critique video games. That's the right way to do it. This isn't helpful to anyone, right? It just literally isn't helpful. You're basically hiding the problem in a bunch of good news, right? So you're supposed to pussyfoot around the actual problem so as to what? Not hurt the developer's feelings. I'm sorry. You're working as a developer, you are working in an actual human space where you're dealing with other humans. If you don't want to do this, you should go into the corporate world, right? You should go do data analysis or go work for big banks where this will probably happen there because it is a corporate setting. We're not just gonna mouth off at each other. But you decided to go into video game design. This means that you have to have a thicker skin than this. My job is not to compliment you twice so as to get one criticism in. What happens when I run out of compliments? Am I no longer allowed to criticize? What if I have more criticisms than I have compliments? Should I just shut my mouth now?
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
You know, what if I didn't enjoy the game? What if I didn't write a positive review because the game was absolutely dog shit? Am I now not allowed to critique your game because I don't have a compliment to levy at you? What if I can't log into your game to begin with? So the game is so broken that I can't even begin to play. Should I say that I like the loading screen? It's a really cool loading screen before I can genuinely critique the fact that I can't get past the loading screen? This doesn't help. I am all for saying that people should stop calling developers names and people should stop insulting developers because that is not helpful. I highly doubt that the lead Overwatch developer, after reading from 50 people that he's a cunt on Twitter, is now turning around and saying, oh, you know what, guys? Screw that. Hero mode is coming. They called me the C word on Twitter, and no one calls me the C word on Twitter. We're going back. We're making hero mode work. I don't think you're getting anywhere with that sort of mentality. But at the same time, this truly isn't it. So please, if you're a developer, you're watching this and you think this is how critique should happen, no. People should have critique and they should try and be as concise as humanly possible, but not everyone has the ability to do so. So sometimes you just have to take the anger and you have to make the best of a very shit world and know that they will praise you as much as they criticize you if you do fix the problems. So at the end of the day, just no, get that away from me. That's just super weird. I don't like anything about that excerpt from the book. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's the video. If you found it helpful, if you found that this video added value to your life, please remember to hit the like button and also leave a comment. It does help out the channel a ton. Thank you to all of the patrons, the YouTube members, and of course the Twitch subs. Thank you so much for all of your support. It means the absolute world to me. Without you, I really wouldn't be doing this. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. For $1 a month, you can go over to Patreon and get access to all of the hentai, the naughty shit, as well as the podcast. So please, I hope to see you there. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to each other. Be good to each other. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace out, fam.